Hi, my name is Craig Richardson, and welcome to Mind to Heart. In this show, we take a journey from our logical, critical mind to the powerful heart center where real transformation occurs. My guests help us understand our journeys by telling us about their paths and lessons they learned along the way. For anyone who was around in the 1980s, it was an action-packed and wild decade in many ways. I was in college from 1981 to 1985, and many of my contemporaries headed to Wall Street after graduation. Money was made hand over fist, and people partied hard. While the 60s was more known for pot and LSD, starting in the late 1970s and throughout the 80s, the drug of choice was cocaine. It fired people up, gave them incredible feelings of confidence, and it was deadly. Len Bias, one of the greatest prospects since Michael Jordan, was drafted by my Boston Celtics in 1986, and he was dead within 48 hours. An all-night party at his former college, the University of Maryland, turned tragic when he ingested a lethal amount of cocaine. The culture reflected these times with movies like Scarface and later Wall Street depicting this era. One of the most popular shows of the day was Miami Vice, which glamorized this high-paced, luxurious, and cocaine-infested life. My guest, Pastor Craig Brown, saw the realities of this lifestyle. In the early 1980s, he worked for one of the largest drug dealers on the East Coast. And not surprisingly, with access to this amount of product, he too became a user and then an addict. He saw the depths that addiction can take you. And thankfully, through the grace of God, he also discovered the road to recovery. He's been clean for 35 years now. And for the past 22 years, he's dedicated his life to helping others who have fallen into the abyss of drug use and addiction. He uses the tenets of Christianity and the saving power of Jesus Christ to help people turn their lives around. Today, he is a recovery pastor and has helped rescue more than 1,000 people from the depths of hell. He's also released a book about his journey and others he's met and helped along the way. The name of the book is Stop Hiding, Start Healing, which we'll hear more about later in the show. So now I'd like to bring in today's guest, Pastor Craig Brown. Pastor Craig, welcome to Mind to Heart. It's great to have you on the show.
Craig, thank you very much. It's great to be with you.
Well, I guess we should, like my show is all about journeys. So why don't we start with yours and just a little background on where you grew up and, what your family was life and all that. Why don't we start there at the beginning?
Sure. I was born in Washington, D.C. I've lived in the area my entire life. Went to high school in D.C. at St. Albans. My dad was an Episcopal minister who had a congregation in Mount Rainier, Maryland, which we in my early days. That's where I was born in D.C. and lived in Mount Rainier my youth, and then we relocated out to Montgomery County in Rockville. And have established pretty deep roots over the last. Well, I just had I have a birthday coming up, but been here all my life. And so I grew up in the church. I grew up with a dad that was a minister. If you know any preacher's kids, we have, depending on the denomination, we have quite a reputation. And I did really well at that. I have two older sisters.
I have to just introduce you. Excuse me, I'm actually a judge's kid. So my father was a judge.
Okay.
So it's the same thing.
Yeah, absolutely. But my childhood, as I shared in the book, and as I've shared, just in my testimony, we had a fairly dysfunctional family. My dad was somewhat of a narcissist. He struggled with his own demons. He was he could be a very angry person. What I saw from the pulpit versus what I saw behind closed doors were two different people. And my sisters and I received the brunt of that. My mom was the typical pastor's wife who had to make the Brown family look really good. And we had to make dad look really good. And that's just a ton of pressure to put on someone, in our youth. And I really, our identity was him and his, role as a minister. And that was our identity as a family. And We didn't discuss emotions or feelings. Everything we did was wrong. Why could, and the comparisons were, over the top. And it was just a very difficult environment. Of course, when you're in it, I didn't realize it at the time, and I didn't realize it at the time. I thought it was a normal family life until, of course, you get on the other side. And as I've done over the last 35 years, looking back and dealing from a lot of different things, my sisters and I all agree it was, how do we survive that? How do we do that? Well, how? You develop coping mechanisms, you develop
Right.
coping skills. And I learned how to deal with pain and shame, guilt and blame and failure. I learned how to escape that. And as I've titled my book, I learned how to hide from that. And it's not, we all do it. All of us have developed these without even knowing, at a very, very early age. And I did. And so my emotional well-being and I didn't have a relationship with my dad. Unfortunately, he was just always busy. And I could count on one hand the number of father-son times we spent together. And I didn't have fingers left. I mean,
That's so important, isn't it? That time. And I think the other thing I wanted to just reiterate, because it's a little bit like with the judges. I know we were laughing in front, but it's the same thing. You get Judge Richardson, and you have to have that perfect facade. And I think when you're a child, it's really difficult when it doesn't match up, right? Because you're going public and everybody's saying, "Oh, what a wonderful person you are," and everything. And then you're like, yeah, it's a little very unsettling, isn't it?
It is. It's just a lot of pressure. I mean, I have a ton of friends. I mean, I've been here again. My dearest friends I've had since eighth grade, and we all come from different experiences. And as you well know, in this region, outside the DC area, inside DC, just the identity of success and the pressure, and you know, it's just hard for families. I mean, you and I aren't the only ones. I mean, it's rampant in our society overall. And if you it's one thing if you had a relationship with your dad and you had a foundation and you had support and you had nurturing and you had love and you had instruction and a guide and a mentor. But when you don't, you're going to find it somewhere. You're going to look for it and find it somewhere. And I found it in going to the party.
And so
And then
tell us about how that happened. I mean, I know from the 80s that the drinking age was 18. Probably people are getting in more at 16,
Sure.
17. Did you
Yeah.
start just by going out to the bars and stuff?
In just in high school, I was a really good athlete. Everybody told me I was, but I didn't believe I was. Should have gone on to play college basketball. I didn't. But we go to a party every now and then, and drinking kegs and everything else around this area. I mean, it was the thing to do. It was natural. It invites everybody. I didn't have any self-discipline, nor did I have any self-control. I just went. I drank it. I didn't use drugs until I got to college. And that's really where the pit of hell began, because I just spent my entire freshman year at the party, and I dropped out of school.
Where did you go to school?
Ithaca College, Ithaca, New York.
In New York, yeah.
Yeah. And so I did, I instead of going to class, and I should have been a walk-on. My friends were just absolutely disappointed in me, and I was disappointed in myself, mostly. And that's where it really begins, at that threshold where you just feel like a failure. So you live up to it, and that's exactly what I did. And I got back home, and I just took a job, various jobs, but then I ended up working in the bar business. And lo and behold, the one bar I was working at was owned by the biggest cocaine dealer on the East Coast at that time. I kind of knew about it, but I didn't think much of it. But I'm working in this establishment, and this major drug trades going on. I mean, this guy was, there was a lot happening, and I'm not going to name names or, share too many details, other than he has since passed away. But, I mean, Capitol Hill people were in there, TV folks, athletes. I mean, it was just, and as a 19, 20-year-old, you're like, oh, wow, this is just amazing. And so I got sucked up into that drug life. I mean, I did some low-level dealing, but not to the degree that he was doing. And then I'd be using cocaine. We'd be up for days. It was just an unbelievably dark, depressing, painful period. And I just, I operated in that. I didn't know anything different. My family didn't really know much because I hid. But my network, all my friends are at Duke, Tufts, Brown, Williams, and here I am. I just feel, and I'm looking at them, and they had their career. I mean, they're attorneys now, and they're physicians, and one's a judge, and and I'm looking at I'm just looking at myself as a complete failure. In the
So
midst of
you did not go back to Ithaca? Did you not go back to Ithaca?
No, I didn't. No, I didn't. Craig, I can't say it's a regret necessarily. If And this is where the spiritual component comes in. If the Lord had wanted to open up a door, if the desire and the passion is on my heart to be able to do that, go back, and fulfill, get my degree, then I would have done it. I would have done it. And it's really not been something that my life and my training, everything has been from the deepest pain. Everything I've been through, everything I am today is a result of that pit of hell and my deepest pain and recovery and healing over the last 35 years, 22 of which I've been serving in the capacity I am and have been. So, but it was a lifestyle that, as you lent by us. I mean, we have mutual friends. When Lenny died, we were just absolutely crushed. The big,
Yeah.
all the
What a talent. Unbelievable.
Oh, it's just horrible. I'll never forget the day that we got the news. And I've played ball with a lot of the former players from that era, and yeah, it was just tragic. But then again, it was it happened, but everything, it just took over the city. It took over the entire.
I think in a way it
country.
also woke a lot. It also woke a lot of people up too. I mean, it was pretty big. I mean, because everybody, there wasn't that high visibility death until then.
Oh, he was one of the first, yes, absolutely, athletes. And I mean, he was it, as far as a ball player. I mean, he was just absolutely talented. And that would have been a wake-up call for some, but it also can act as a catalyst for someone to go and continue on their journey and hide the pain, shame,
That's never
guilt.
going to happen, and he did so much.
It's such a cycle, Craig. Yep.
Well, it's speaking of cycles, and I want to get into this more. We're going to take our first break, but when we come out of the break, I want to talk about the cycle, because you can't start recovering until you hit bottom. And so when we get back from the first break, I want to get into that piece with you. Your website is craigdbrown.com, and mine is craigericardson.com.
Okay.
So I just want to put that out, and you can find information about his book. So let's take a break, and we'll get back on the other side. Hi, welcome back to Mind to Heart with your host, Craig Richardson. Again, my website is craigericardson.com. My guest today, and I'm delighted to have Pastor Craig Brown, who prior to the break explained how he had gotten wrapped up into that crazy world of the 80s and cocaine. And you can reach him at his website at craigdbrown.com. But Pastor Craig, as I said before the break, we kind of got into the craziness and the lifestyle, but take us sort of from that point until, on the way down, because you can't go up until you hit down. So why don't we pick it up there?
Well, yeah, I mean, the first chapter of my book, Stop Hiding, Start Healing, is on purpose. And that is, until the pain is greater than your fear, you won't change. The pain has to be greater than your fear of changing. And it was after that period, and I was in it, and here's the spiritual component that a lot of people aren't aware of, Craig, and that is the Lord's hand is on, God's hand is on every single one of us. So many people I talk to, they look back and go, I have no idea how I got through that, or how did I ever, survive that, or this. You don't realize that the Lord's hand is on us, and it's up to us to acknowledge that, accept that, and allow Him to work in our life, right? Even though I grew up in the church, I knew nothing.
Mhm.
I knew nothing. So late 80s or thereabouts, I was, you probably know this area, Dewey Beach,
Yep,
Delaware.
sure.
I was coming back from there after a tough weekend. And it was on my way back up Route 50, and I had this, it was really an epiphany. I almost talked to myself and I said, if you don't change, you're going to end up dead, or you're going to continue on this life of destruction. And that was a defining moment in my life, because the pain level had gotten to the place where I realized that I've got to do something. This is not my life. And a lot of people, when they are in it, are looking out and saying the same thing. What am I doing here? What am I doing with my life? But they're scared to death to change, because they don't know what process to take. They don't want to reveal themselves. They don't want to be transparent. They don't want to expose what they're doing, because they want to continue to suffer and hide. But I realized I couldn't anymore. And I began to extricate myself from that whole environment. And I didn't go to rehab, or I didn't go, it was miraculous. It was just amazing. I made a decision that I am not going to do that anymore. And it took weeks and months to extricate myself from that. And I began to get my life back on track again. And things began to change. But Craig, I was still miserable. I was clean. I quit. I had quit. My friends continued, but I had quit. And but I was still miserable for like 7 years.
Well, they call
And
that a dry drunk, when the person, when they,
there's a number of different names for it. But I was still miserable.
'cause you,
I had
yeah,
no
because you're not dealing with the underlying. Yeah,
yeah, I
yeah.
had no mission and purpose. I had no mission and purpose. I had no goals. I was still just floundering. I was working. But I just didn't have that purpose, and I'm floundering. And the pain level was still there. I wasn't in that environment anymore, but I'm still my from the trauma and everything I'd been through. I hadn't processed it. I hadn't done anything about it. And that's the difference, Craig, in recovery. You can get clean and sober, and that's great, but that's the byproduct of doing the work. And doing the work is healing from all the pain, what caused you to get into that mess, make those poor decisions, the depression, anxiety, stress, shame. If you don't deal with that, it's going to linger.
You're going to
And
find
it
something
and I
else
held
to
Yeah,
medicate.
yeah. And so I held on to that. I held on to it. And believe it or not, I got that phone call that none of us wanted to get, that my dad was dying. And my sisters called me, and I rushed to the hospital. And I stood at his bedside, and he was bleeding internally. And he just hit a period in his life where he had one issue after another. And I stood there. And again, I said earlier, I didn't really have a good, loving, caring, nurturing relationship with him, but he's still my dad, right? And I
Yeah,
stood there
sure.
by his bedside in the intensive care unit, and my whole past came back rushing before me. And I said to myself, I said, you know what? My dad's going to die, and I've done nothing with my life. I am just a complete failure. And Craig, that was when the pain was greater than my fear. The very next day, and no one led me, no one told me how to do it, no, nothing. I just said, God, I can't do this anymore. I mean, I just can't do this anymore. And I need you to take away the pain. Just come into my life, take over my life, be my, I didn't know the term, higher power, or come over and be my savior. I just cried out to the Lord, and I haven't been the same since that day. And that's,
Did you ever have a conversation with your dad, or did you bring closure at all, or is it just that?
um, uh, well, my life changed and everything changed. And we never, honestly, Craig, it's sad, but I can't ever recall him putting his arm around me and say, hey, son, let's talk about what you've
That's
been
fine.
through. He never asked me. He never son, how
Well,
can I
some of
help
that,
you?
that generation wasn't capable of it, I
They
think.
weren't.
And
No. If you knew his background and what his upbringing, and that's the part that you don't get, and that's the part that you're not going to accept because you're going to. I'm going to blame him, and I blamed
right,
everybody. We all do.
right. Yeah, it can't be
When you're
us.
in that,
It's gotta be somebody else.
yeah, yeah. Oh, it's not my fault. Oh no, it's not my fault that I'm using drugs and making a mess of my life and getting in car wrecks and throwing up blood and that's not. Oh no, that's not my deal. Shh. Until we take responsibility, man, nothing is going to change. And that day changed my life forever. And I began to work my recovery. I began to admit, I began to process, I began to heal, I began to be restored. Everything started to happen and fall into place on that day. Everything
Did you
since.
get into, did you do a 12 step at all, or did you
No,
find
not until not until I started the ministry and have been doing it for 22 years. Yeah, I had no
it's interesting.
formal, yeah, no formal anything, you
Yeah.
know?
Well,
And and it's
you were
very,
clearly led. Yeah. It's
yeah,
interesting because my grandfather, in the 1930s, and I think there was probably alcohol because, we were Boston Irish English, that,
oh, sure.
as they said
Yeah,
in Boston, you don't have to be Irish to be an alcoholic, but it helps. But he was English, the old line, and he got into something called the Oxford Group in the
yes,
1930s,
yeah, yeah.
which if people don't know, it was the precursor to AA. In fact, Bill Wilson, the founder of AA, was in the Oxford Group. It was a little more evangelical. They were doing a lot of other
They
things.
were. They
But my
were.
grandfather, I was cleaning out my folks' house after my mom died a couple years ago, and I came across a newspaper from that Oxford Group, and there was my picture of my grandfather. He was the Army Reserves, and he had a quote, something to the effect of, only God can change people's lives. How do I know that? Because he changed mine. And I found that very fascinating. And then I discovered his Bible. I still have it behind
Oh,
me.
that's
And
great.
he
That's
wrote in
great.
the margin. So I think that's a very powerful. And again, this was a group that he was sort of on the organic founding part of that. So it sounds like, even though you ultimately discovered 12 step, but you kind of discovered on your own. Your higher power, God, kind of brought you there originally.
He did, and he will. It's not just, I am not unique here. For every one of your listeners, whoever is struggling, whoever is dealing with this, and they continue to hide, uh, there is a process and a way for you to be set free. There just is. And again, if we are so afraid of taking that next step, but if pain level is greater than that fear, you are ready. And I was. And so I just began to immerse myself. See, the Bible is a recovery manual. Okay. The Bible is a life manual. So many people are so intimidated by it, but it is true. When you find the right passages and every passage is specific for whatever you're going through in your life. You cannot find anything you're going through in your life that is not written, right? So that is a good guide. That's why I'm a big fan of Christ-centered recovery, because he's the only one that can change, fix, heal, and restore. This is your grandfather experience.
Yeah, he
Programs
did
can't.
that. He went through the Bible and he
Yeah.
underlined things and wrote notes about
Yes.
how it impacted him.
Absolutely. That's the answer. That is the answer. And as you mentioned, the Oxford group, it was very faith-based, but over the years that fabric has been worn. And it's like higher power is, for your choosing. But I'll make no apologies. I'll make no apologies based on my own experience, my own testimony, my own miracle. God is the one that did it. He is the only one that did that in my life, changed my life. And I can't be more grateful than I am today that he saved me, because I was in a bad, bad place.
Well, interesting, because Bill Wilson, actually, Carl Jung, the famous Swiss psychiatrist, had a mutual friend of Bill Wilson's who was also had hit bottom with alcoholism. And Carl Jung, in a letter back and forth to Wilson about this third person, Carl Jung basically said exactly that. He said, this person's beyond hope. The only thing that can help him is some sort of, I can't remember the term he used, but some sort of spiritual enlightenment or awareness or awakening. So, that, I think that was, around at that time. In fact, Carl Jung's father was a minister as well. So, that that's definitely part of that that whole concept of bringing the higher power, spiritual God, Jesus. I mean, you can't do it by yourself, and I think that's what you discover when you're hit rock bottom, isn't it?
It is. Absolutely it is. But it's, I mean, look at your show, Mind and Heart, right? I mean, uh, for anybody struggling with addiction, you got to change your thinking. You have to change your thinking. The mind and the heart are totally equally yoked. They're totally connected. And when you're, and it's all about reprogramming. We talk about basketball. Let's pivot. We're gonna, pivot, and we're gonna go in this direction. It's about complete change, total life change, starting with the way you are thinking. And when we're in the midst of a pit of hell, we develop a false reality, totally false reality. And it's not based on truth. When we begin to be set free, all of a sudden it's a brand new reality, brand new way of thinking. And in turn, it heals the heart. Your heart begins to be transformed. What was once hardened, hurt, in pain, full of shame, all that through God's help is going to be stripped away. It's going to be stripped away. And as that happens, you get a new clear thinking, clear purpose, clear mission in your mind, and the way you go, and you change your mind, you change your behavior, you change your circumstances,
Yeah.
mind, behavior, circumstances, and heart. And
Well,
it's
that's a
just
beautiful
miraculous.
segue, I think, to our next segment, because I do want to get into how and there's that archetype of the wounded healer, and that's what a lot of healthcare people are. If you ask any
Yes.
dig the surface on any healthcare person, they've come out of the crazy, backgrounds and
Oh, absolutely.
it's fun.
Yep.
So when we get back from the break, I want to get into that, how you turned your own pain into helping others, and
Okay.
so we'll pick that up on the other side of the break. Again, Pastor Craig's website is craigdbrown.com, and mine's craigericardson.com, and we'll see you on the other side. Hi, welcome back to Mind to Heart with your host, Craig Richardson. Again, you can find me at craiggericardson.com, and I'm delighted to have with me for the second half hour here my guest, Pastor Craig Brown. His website is craigdbrown.com. Pastor Craig, before the break, we were talking about how you came out of recovery and started peeling away your pain. And then, as a lot of wounded healers do, you went in and helped others. And in doing so, I'm sure you helped yourself. So can you talk a little bit about that transition and then how you got into helping others?
Yeah, I did. Early on, I just had this desire. I mean, well, recovery is built such that when you go through the 12 steps, the 12th step is all about giving back, right? I mean, that's just a principle for life. You've been through this. Now, don't hold on to it, give it away, share it, encourage, support, pray for, help others. And I wasn't necessarily following that mold, but like you have a calling, that was a calling for me to be able to give back. My pastor asked me to start a ministry called Celebrate Recovery at our church 22 years ago. And it's a formatted ministry based on, the Beatitudes found in Matthew and the 12 steps. And it's just a Christ-centered recovery ministry. And the Saddleback Church in Lake Forest, California, formatted it, put it together, launched it, and it's now all over the world. So he asked me if I would start that, knowing my testimony, right? He knew me well. And I said, absolutely, and without hesitation. And so that was, I'd had the calling before that, to give back. And I was serving in various capacities. I share a story in the book. It's kind of funny, of one of my best friends now, but I confronted him because every time he came to church, I smelled alcohol in his breath. And I tell the story in the book about, I felt impressed, the Lord telling me, go confront him, love him, lovingly, go do that. And I was like, oh, and you know what happens with disobedient Bible, that things don't happen well. So I did. I went to his house and I got there and he wasn't there. I'm like, oh, good. So I left. Little did I know, I'm about to pull off my exit to go to my house. My cell phone rings. He goes, hey, I heard you came by. Come back. And I said, okay. I
You're like,
said,
oh, now you're like
I
Joan
said,
and the
I'm not
whale. You're
sure.
not going to get away
Yeah,
with that one.
yeah, I'm not sure you want me to come back, but the timing couldn't have been better. Anyway, so I went back and I sat in his living room and I said, you have a real issue with alcohol, don't you? And I just floored him.
Mm,
And it was one of the first, not the first, but it was one of many experiences leading up to starting the ministry that the Lord put me in somebody's life or asked me to help him. The Lord does, that's what God does. He takes wrecks like me to
mm.
be able to help other people. He takes wrecks like me and builds them and heals them for his purpose to go help. And I'm a firm believer in that. That's happening worldwide. Nothing I've done. It's been done for years. So anyway, that was a funny story, but that's kind of a precursor to me serving now for the last 22 years in Christ-centered ministry.
I'm just
And
curious, how did he, because some people get really
oh,
angry.
well, there's generally you're going to get two reactions: one of remorse, kind of a grief and sadness, or the other, anger. He didn't really have either. He got real quiet. He's a big guy too. I'm 6'4", 230. He's about matching me, right? And I'm thinking, you know, I didn't think he was going to come after me, but a couple of days later, he goes, you got a lot of nerve, man. You got a lot of nerve coming to my house." And and I said, well, take it any way you will, but I love you, man. I was sent here to care for you, help you, and I'm there for you, and I will be. And he went on a journey. I was used in a good way, I hope, but he's one of my best friends now, and he's gotten his life back on track. It wasn't instantaneous. He had to go through a few things still, but he's a wonderful guy, just a wonderful guy, and he's been clean and off that stuff for a long time now. So I've been serving in that I've been flowing in that stream, Craig. I mean, a lot of different, and I wasn't, I never set out to do any of it. I just it was absolutely positively natural, and it's just a God-given opportunity to just give back and hopefully make a difference in people's lives. And that's what really, after 22 years, prompted me to write the book, Stop Hiding, Start Healing, because I did it myself. I lived every chapter and more. And I was just prompted to, I don't consider myself a writer or an author, but God does amazing things with ordinary people. And not that this is amazing, but so I wrote the book, and based on experience and where I've been and where others can be. My passion really, Craig, is to help people get out of the pit of hell, or if they're in it, or to avoid it rather, or if they're in it, keep their stay much shorter than it needs to be, you know.
Yeah, and I
And
do think there's a lot more awareness about that. I mean, I think AA had its own thing, and in the 70s, and sort of, there
sure,
was the Oxford group, but people didn't talk about things like that. But I really do think one of the positive transitions in our lifetime since the 80s really is that there's a lot more willingness for people, because you talk about shame all the time, and that's such a powerful motivator to keep people quiet, right?
comes from the pit
And
of hell.
yeah, and I think that's almost worse, isn't it, than the actual, and then ironically or sort of diabolically, you go back to the source that put you there in the first place to continue to self-medicate you. That's why it's a spiral downward, and you end up having to do more to get to the same feeling. And I remember, I'm a big Boston fan, as I mentioned, and so another story we have, I don't remember Derek Sanderson, he played,
Yes.
he was a winger for the Bruins back in the heyday of the 70s, and I think it was maybe I think Bobby Orr found him under a bridge in the Ponset. It was I think it was he was crystal meth or something else. It wasn't, but still. And Derek has a wonderful testimony. He wrote an amazing story, and Bobby Orr, who's to me my childhood hero, was the one who
Yeah.
literally lifted him up out of the depths
Found
of
them.
hell.
Yep.
And he got him. Not only did he help him and get him on sober, but then he got him a job, and he was calling the Bruins game for about a decade. So
Yeah.
it does take a special person like you sometimes to walk in there and be willing to do that, doesn't it?
Well, you have to. Yeah, it does. It does. You're very kind. I'm not special, but you have to be able to ask to. Well, the Bible's very clear about confronting lovingly, confronting, with a biblical blueprint, not to be intrusive or like you have all the answers, or I can't fix anybody. I'm not going in thinking I can fix anybody. People can't fix people. God is the only one that can change, fix, heal, and restore, right? Mentally, physically, spiritually, and emotionally. He's the only one that can do that, right? Now, he has physicians and therapists and counselors and others that are of a network, which people need, right? People need a network to get well. But you mentioned shame. I focus on that a lot of the book because it comes from the pit of hell, and it is the one shame holds and keeps people, real good people, in bondage. Well, all right, let's quick Bible story. Genesis 3. What happened to Adam and Eve when they were exposed? What happened? They felt shame and they hid.
Yeah.
Shame and they hid, right?
Yeah.
From God. Craig, it's been going on forever.
Yeah,
It's been going on forever.
well,
right?
it's killing me. I was trying to think of that pic. I saw that there, and it was Monroe or Mano. There's a picture where it's a very powerful picture where they're leaving the Garden of Eden, and the looks on their face when they look back on. I can't remember you may remember that thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're right. I mean, it's something in us, and it's so controlling and so powerful, and really, I think the only way to get to it is what you did, is just to, I think that's the whole thing about AA, right? Say you walk in there and say, I'm Craig and I'm an alcoholic, right? I mean, there's no hiding. You're not hiding it anymore.
There's no hiding.
And I think by doing that, don't you give away its power?
Not immediately. Over time. Craig, I know a lot of people that have been in recovery for a very long time, and shame continued. Not maybe to the degree it did 10 years ago, 5 years ago, or last week, but it continues to wreak havoc to a degree, but not a great degree. But and really, the Lord's the only one that can really truly see, when you let him in that heart, as you well know, when you let him in that heart of yours, and that shame is kind of like a label. It's been posted on that heart. It's been posted there, and and labels are really hard to get, to take away, but the Lord's the only one that can really do that. When you allow him to be able to do that, it will diminish over days, weeks, months, and years as you continue the process. You have to do the work. You have to do the work, and you have to put in the effort. You have to get to step one and say, my life is unmanageable, and I can't control my tendency to do the wrong thing, and I've tried to control it. When we're in the midst of it, we're very controlling.
Mm-hmm.
We're manipulative. We lie, right? Anything, the energy we can put into hiding, whatever we need to do to hide it. And that very same energy and effort, when you put it into your healing, oh my goodness. Oh my gosh, Craig. When you put that same energy that it takes you to hide, put it in your healing, you'll be set free and you won't know what hit you.
I think that's a great segue, because when on our last segment, I want to talk specifically about Stop Hiding, Start Healing, the book that you've written. I know you've covered some of it in there, but I want to
Sure.
get to that and a little bit more of these same concepts. I do completely agree 100%. Only God can change the heart, and sometimes he leaves a little bit in there just as a reminder. I mean, it's my dad worked a lot with mental health patients, and he said that they would get off their meds and that think they would be on their meds and think everything was great, and then they were like so it's I do think that it's a little bit like Achilles heel, right? You gotta have that reminder there, because it kind of keeps you humble too. So when we get back, we're going to talk about Stop Hiding, Start Healing with Pastor Craig Brown. Again, you can get all the information about his book and him on craigdbrown.com, and my website is craigericardson.com, and we'll look forward to hearing about the book on the other side of the break. Hi, welcome back to Mind to Heart with your host, Craig Richardson. Again, you can find me on craigerichardson.com. I'm here in the last segment with my guest, Pastor Craig Brown, who has been providing amazing information about his journey from the depths of hell, as he puts it, as addiction to cocaine, and then now coming out the other side, and not only helping himself, but but also helping others. And in addition to doing a ministry for 22 years, he's just released a book, Stop Hiding, Start Healing. So I want to spend the last minutes that we have here, Pastor Craig, talking about that. By the way, you can find him at craigdbrown.com. So why don't we pick up with the, I know a lot of what's in the book is what we've covered, but why don't you give us a little background about the book and what you're intending to do with it?
My prayer is, Craig, that that it will be included with all the different resources that are out there in a book form and on the website, to make a difference in someone's life, and be a resource for change, be a resource for awakening, enlightening, be a resource to help that person that's in that really dark place, or that, whether it's addiction, shame. It doesn't have to be just addiction. Matter of fact, a lot of people enter into recovery, not just men. I can speak about our ministry. 2 out of 3 come because of pain, pain, not just addiction. But whatever you're struggling with, see, we're all in recovery from something. All of us are, right? And it doesn't just, and a lot of people think the stigma of recovery is that it's just for it's for that alcoholic or that, drug addict. And it's not. Recovery, the Bible's very clear about, you can recover from anything. And it's generally that one thing or that 2 things that are really keeping you from all that God wants you to be. There's something there that is blocking that is hindering you. And a lot of times it's pain and shame and guilt and of the past, pain of the past. So I was prompted to write the book based on just my observations, right, over the last 22 years of Christ-centered recovery. Also my own story, not in its complete entirety, but a lot of my heart. As I said earlier, I've lived every chapter and every sentence in this book and more. And I just wanted to share that and offer it to anybody that may be struggling. Now, the title is Stop Hiding, Start Healing. And all of us hide. All of us have something to hide. All of us have, things we prefer just not to share with anybody. But a lot of times those are the things, maybe bitterness, maybe resentment, maybe jealousy, maybe failure, whatever, failure in marriage, divorce, could be the abortion from years ago or something like that. But people are using, could be pornography. Pornography is a major, major issue in people's lives. It really is. And it's one of the most hidden, okay? Sexual addiction, pornography, it's one of the most hidden. Drinking, is socially acceptable. Smoking cigarettes, socially acceptable. Marijuana is becoming socially acceptable. Yeah. It's a gradual process. Wherever, people want to legalize drugs, everything's, the filter is being stripped and everything's becoming quote unquote socially acceptable, but it's not. God has a very, very defined way to live, and the opposite is sin. Let's call it what it is, right? But this book is designed for anybody. Anybody that is going through or struggling with pain of the past or any of that, and they continue to hide it. And we've served thousands of people over the last 22 years, and those that stick with it and work through it have all come out of hiding. And stepping through the door on that first night takes a ton of courage, and it takes a ton of courage, and that is stepping out of hiding. You're entering an environment where you will be loved, accepted for who you are, loved unconditionally, helped, and we're not there to fix. We're there to help and support and pray and give resources and encouragement and share hope. And that's what the book's about. The book is.
And I think you hit on something I think is very unconditional love. And I think that the one of the most insidious or the most insidious part about shame and guilt is that you feel unlovable. Isn't that it? Isn't that
absolutely.
And it's like, I don't want that. I'm not worthy of that. And I think when you have Christ's love, that's
overwhelming.
Yeah, that's really, I think really where it started to be, right?
Well, that's what I share in the book about why we hide, because we don't feel good about ourselves. We do not feel good about the person we are inside when we're struggling. We just don't. And we wear a mask. Well, Craig, one of the best places to hide is church.
Hmm.
Because you go every Sunday, you look good, you dress up, you go and say,
Checking
hi,
that
hi,
box. Yeah, look
coffee.
at me.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Hey, what's going on? Nothing. How you doing? Good. Especially
Yeah.
us guys, Craig. Hey, how are you?
Yeah.
I'm good. It's all
Oh,
good.
coffee and donuts. Yeah, doing great.
Yeah,
Hey,
yeah. Oh,
you
just
see the
fine.
hockey
Yeah,
game?
yeah. Hey, how about that game last night, man? And that's all, and that's us,
Yeah.
whereas our wives or the women are just, so, they're embracing and uh, they still hide, but not like
Yeah.
we do. Us
Yeah.
guys. I mean, we have to put on a show, man. We got to put on the mask, make sure we're okay when we're not. And churches it's rampant. People go there to hide rather than heal. And I've seen it. And that's really was the catalyst for me sharing and writing the book. Um, if you only knew, whoever's listening, if you only realize that when you come out of hiding and begin to heal, your life will be never be the same, and your marriage will never be the same. Your relationship with your kids, your workplace, your career, your mission, your purpose in life, your healing, your heart, and your mind never be the same again. But you have to take that first step. And that's a hard first step.
Well, why don't you just quickly just say what is it? Because I know there are steps. You had yours. You're in the car. You had an epiphany. The people. You share the example where you basically put the guy's nose in it. You have a drinking problem. But what have you seen for those people that are pretty scared? What is typically the best first step that you've seen, or is there such a thing as a best first step?
Well, the best thing about the silver lining in COVID this past year for people in recovery is that they don't have to go to a building. We've been meeting online virtually for the past year, and they can sit in their home on their own, in private, in isolation, should they so choose, and tune in and not say a
And
thing.
not even put their face on video, right? They
Right.
can.
They don't have to they
Yeah.
don't have to show their face. They don't have to do that. And that's been extremely helpful, but it's also very hurtful because I'm a firm believer, Craig, that healing happens in circles.
Mhm.
When you get in that small group and you sit across from someone else and you get to see them, look in their eyes, and you get to hear their heart and their story, and it's there, you realize you're not alone. And my message to everyone listening, those that may be struggling, is that you're not alone. You have a group of people that are there in recovery places, and I can help any of your listeners if they want to reach out to me either on my Facebook page, Stop Hiding, Start Healing, or the website you've mentioned, or the book website, Stop Hiding, Start Healing book.com. And I'll be able to share resources or other places where you can go if you're not here locally or geographically, if you're in a different area. But I would love to be a help to anybody, any of your listeners that may be struggling. Reach out to me anytime. But it's about that first step. And it's the first step, that the best first step you'll ever take in your life, in that where you can step out. And here's the thing, because we're in the midst of our pain, shame, guilt, addiction, whatever that may be, we naturally isolate. And we are and the other drawback to that is that we've had parents and other people that have just beat us over the head, trying to fix us, trying to control us, trying to manage it, where all you want to do is find the right person, place, environment to go heal. Well, that is Christ-centered recovery because it's safe, okay? Because we have a high regard for confidentiality.
Mhm.
You come as you are, there's no condemnation, and you will be loved unconditionally for who you are, because that's what we're called to do for you, right? God's very clear about that. So if you're hesitant about entering into, I totally get it, because I was right there with you. I was
Well,
right there.
we have a little less than a minute left, and I think that that's very important. And I think that your testimony and the testimony of millions of other people, I think, is starting to break that barrier down where
Yeah,
people are starting to come out. And in the last 30 seconds or so, do you have any? I mean, you've given all your websites. CraigDBrown.com is one I've been giving out. Any final words to our listeners here?
yeah. Yes, absolutely. And I'll finish with that first chapter. When your pain is greater than your fear of changing, you're ready. You are ready to experience a miracle in your life and healing and restoration. But you have to take that first step. You have to find that environment. And you and I, Craig, we can help them do that.
Well, I really appreciate you taking the time. It's a wonderful message, a very inspirational journey that you've been on, and you're helping everybody out there. And I really, God bless you in your work, Pastor Craig. And I really appreciate you spending an hour with me. And thanks again.
Craig, I've loved every minute of it. Great to meet you. Thank you for having me on.
Thanks for listening to Mind to Heart with me, Craig Richardson. My path has led me from the Protestant and Catholic churches, as well as studies in alchemy, mediumship, Eastern philosophy, and most recently, Edgar Cayce and transpersonal psychology. As an intuitive life coach, I am ready to guide you to an amazing life. For more information about me, visit craigericardson.com.